Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq, with daily insight on the Nasdaq-100 index, or the NDX, which is made up of 100 of the largest domestic and international non-financial innovative companies listed on Nasdaq. The NDX has been the barometer for U.S. large cap growth and also one of the best performing indexes over the last decade and a half, not to mention one of the most liquid index ecosystems in the world. Joining me this Tuesday afternoon, we have Shawn, Cruz, manager of trader services at TD Ameritrade, to discuss Nasdaq-100 performance. We'll take a look at trends in the Nasdaq Volatility Index, and finally discuss valuations and preview Alphabet earnings. Shawn, it's great to see you. Welcome back to Trade Talks. And certainly a lot of volatility to kick off the month of January, and certainly as we kick off the month of February. What are your thoughts as you look at levels in the Nasdaq-100 and Vol Q? Any trends that you can discern there?
Yeah, I mean, we've had a pretty good start to the week here, and what I'm looking for, and why I think you're still getting some of that volatility, uncertainty showing up in Vol Q. I think you can get a much larger pullback. What I think of the market's waiting on is really what happens with the rest of the week. We have quite a bit coming up, not just with tech earnings, but also in some of the bigger macro pictures that really have a lot of influence on the potential for expectations for Fed policy and interest rates. And if you think what really got this entire just volatile kick up we started off the year with back in January, it was actually the Fed minutes that came out, to me, was the major catalyst that really started us in this high volatility environment that we've been in. And I think that's going to continue to be the case for the market by large. But let's not forget, we have some pretty important earnings coming up this week. Leading into that, we've had some pretty good sessions. It looks like we're stabilizing here a little bit, which is what you like to see. And you're not really seeing, if you look at the breadth, you're not seeing a lot of bright spots in some of the big areas. Not seeing a lot of red spots. It's sort of a little bit more of an even keel. Some are up, some are down a bit, as we get ready to go into what I think is the real meat of this week that will give us an idea of how we should expect to finish.
Right. And Shawn, that's a great point that you make. And I also think, in addition to the volatility that we've seen from macro factors, really valuation was a big piece of this as well. I mean, just look at the way, a number of the stocks, not only the Nasdaq-100, but just in general, have run in 2020 and 2021. I mean, they had to come down to earth at some point.
It does, and I expect to, after we get some earnings out here, to hear from analysts in terms of, are they going to read it, what they have it there? Are they going to go out there, upgrade, downgrade? I think is probably the bigger risk for some of these companies, and that could come in the form of a price cut, maybe moving them from buy to neutral, or overweight to equal weight, something around there. I think that is the real concern here. And if you look at some of the valuations, one of those is actually Google, which is going to report here fairly soon. They actually are really at the bottom of the pack when you look at some of these high-flying tech names that have really been crowd favorites over the years. The only major tech name that has a little bit of a lower valuation just in terms of expected earnings is Facebook, but they're both down there at the bottom. Google also has one of the larger spreads they've had in percentage terms from the median analyst estimate out there as well. So I think that's also something interesting, and why this earnings report is going to be so important. It'll be a matter of, does Google maybe then rise back to some of those levels and close the gap on those analyst expectations, those analyst price targets, or do we see the analyst price targets come down a little bit if they disappoint? So it's going to be, to me, not only the usual ad revenue piece that we're always looking at, but I think looking at YouTube is going to be incredibly important. Getting large contracts in the enterprise cloud system is something to keep an eye on. That will help them maybe gain on Amazon Web Services and also Microsoft. And then also, it's something I think could be a little special add on to the mix. There would be any news on Waymo. If you get a lot more of these electric vehicles makers coming out there, getting a lot more coverage, I think autonomous vehicles is maybe going to start trickling into the picture. And Waymo is a pretty interesting offering that Google has in their portfolio as well.
All right, Shawn, we appreciate the insight as always. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq.